Hello and welcome to episode 10. So, in this episode, it was a thought that just sort of occurred to me. I was listening to Eckhart Tolle, and it's funny because the whole meditation or the whole practice or the video, the sermon, whatever you want to call it, was all about, clearing the mind and identifying, so becoming the consciousness behind the, so being conscious of the fact that you're conscious, being the awareness behind everything. The whole point again of not of letting go of thought. And then this thought occurred to me. It was like, oh, I've not done an episode where I talked about letting go. Um, it's funny that it came up in the space where I was basically formless. Um, but I thought, this so the topic of letting go, because there's all sorts of different lessons that you learn and that you go through, and I feel like I've said before, a lot of us will go through the same speed bumps, the same checkpoints, and come up against some of the same difficulties, but um, letting go is one of the most difficult, if not the most difficult, because one of the, like, being able to let go of someone that has hurt you significantly and that maybe doesn't treat you great, and like, well, treats you like shit. It's like, it's not easy to let go of anyone, but to let go of a person like that, it's more justified, isn't it? But what about when you have to let go of someone who's always treated you with respect, with someone who's always cared about you, who still cares about you? What about when you've got to let go of someone like that? You know, there's been people in my life leading up to now, and I've connected with so many different people over time, and some of those connections, I thought were significant at the time, and I thought, oh, this is like, this is an amazing connection, and this person, I'm going to know this person for a long time, and I suppose you tell yourself a story, and the truth is that we don't know, and that we can't know. It's however the story develops. Sometimes the friendship or the relationship that you have with someone reaches a natural conclusion, and if you try to push it past that natural conclusion, if you try to force it, um, problems start to surface. Friction starts to surface. Um, there was a guy called Chris, who I connected to online, and he was going through a divorce, and he really nice guy actually, and he's really into his spirituality, and I think he's sort of mid 40s. He was in a band as well. He used to make well, he still does. He's still in a band, and he still makes music and everything. But I liked his music as well, and creative person. But he was just kind of stuck in a slump after the divorce. Like, what ended up happening was, they, like, based on what he told me, because he told me quite a lot, is they had kind of like the best friend vibe, but they didn't have the romantic side. But they, like, and I've had this before, it's like, when you find someone, like, say you've gone through relationships and the relationships have not been very good, and then you find someone who's like a best friend, and you think, well, this is like the best relationship I've ever had with a member of the opposite sex. And I think a lot of us go through this, where we get to the best friend stage and we kind of confuse that with romance, even though it's not meant to be romance, because we're like, well, because the thing is, it's like, this is the person I feel the most safe with, and then it's the same vice versa. It's like, this is a person I trust completely. And then, sort of like, the sexualizing, the romance that kind of bleeds into it, even though, because we're I think we're still finding ourselves at that point, and I've been through that stage as well, where I don't know how, like, because my relationship with women up until that point, um I didn't know how to separate friendship and only friendship, from crossing that line into it becoming something more. I'm not talking about me pushing it on, but like both of us being like, they want to cross that line, and then I'm not recognizing that, look, this is not, we're not meant to cross that line. You know what I mean? Like we're supposed to be friends. And that's something that I've only learned in the last couple of years, to be honest with you, where I've learned to really see, um, I've made some really good female friends, and I'm really grateful for that as well, because I think, it's a massive source of knowledge and a massive source of, I don't like, just women are amazing in general. I think they give you something that men don't give you. I think both are great in their own ways, but the relationship I have with my male friends is not the same as the relationships I have with my female friends. Um, for various reasons, and I have mentioned it before. Um, but yeah, I think we all go, and with Chris, he met his sort of best friend, and he turned it, and he married her. He married her best, but like they weren't meant to be together that way, and they realized it about a year into the marriage, and then it started to deteriorate. And when I met him, it had got to the point where they still had a decent enough relationship, but it was a little bit messed up because, like, she was still relying on him financially. The divorce had not gone through yet, and he couldn't let go. Like, he couldn't let go of it. And, like, I had so many conversations with him where I said, look, you, like, rationalize this in your head. Like, like, he even talked, because, like, he got like quite bad into addiction while he was with her, and I said to him, I said, look, one of the ways that that it's your person is you make each other better. Like you improve each other. There's no way you could see yourself without them. And I said to him, I said, look, from what you've told me of your life, you actually got worse while you were with her. So that's not the person you're meant to be with. You went back to addiction and things like that. So he knew, and the thing is, every time I had this conversation with him, he knew what I was saying was right, and he could feel it, but he just couldn't let go, and he would go round in the loops, and he even got to a point at one point where he said, "I don't want to sign the divorce papers," and I said to him, I said, the position that you're putting her in there, because she's relying on you financially as well. You're in a position of power, and you're basically saying, no, now I'm changing my mind. I said, it's not fair to her, and we sort of disagreed on it. He said, oh, well, you don't know the situation. I said, well, I do know the situation because you've explained it to me. um and I think the longer that he stayed in that stuck place, the more distance was created between us, because I kept trying to, like, one point I really tried to push him, like I really tried to motivate him, and he said, I feel like, you're having a go at me, basically. I feel like you kind of criticizing me. And I said, look, no, I'm not trying to criticize you. I'm trying to motivate you out of the hole that you've dug yourself into. Um, but he's like, oh, I just can't take it. I'm too sensitive at the moment. I said, okay. I said, but it's been like a year and a half since you separated from your ex-wife now. Um, but he was still holding on to it. He just wouldn't let go. And eventually, and it wasn't like we like massively fell out over anything. Um, Eventually, I just, because he was like, every time we used to speak, he had this really low, exhausted energy, and I found myself trying to pick him up in a lot of the conversations that we had, and I realized it was kind of emotionally regulating him a little bit. And eventually, I said to him, I said, look, I just think I'm going to have to draw the line here, because you know uh, you're just going in circles with this, and it's not like you're not able to move on, and it's not healthy. And having to witness it, and to keep, because every time we talk, that, like, you're stuck, you're like, you're still, like, you're completely focused on this thing, like it's taking up, like, who you are as a person. It's like, the thing is like, he was a decent person, all that sort of thing, but he just couldn't let this thing go, and eventually I had to let him go. And he was surprised, actually. And I said, look, at the end of the day, sometimes people just reach the end of the path. And I know that sounds like me justifying the fact that I'm essentially cutting you off, but there's I'm saying to you that sitting here and witnessing this every day, and watching you just go around in circles is kind of maddening. because I can't keep having the same conversations with you again and again and again. And there's been people like that. I mean, it's hard to let go. And I know him. I knew him for I think it was like nearly a year, something like that. And like we had some really good conversations and talked about spirituality. And we had a sort of like brotherly relationship. He was like a younger brother. But he did used to piss me off with how depressing he was sometimes. But I had to separate because it was draining my energy. And that's the thing, it's some relationships, and the hardest thing is to let go of someone who you've like sort of gone really deep with, because and I've done this with someone with she wasn't actually an ex girlfriend, because we never like officially dated, but we went really deep into the spirituality, and again it crossed over. It was the last actually it was the second to last actually relationship that I had with a woman, where we should have well, I say should, obviously it happened the way it was meant to happen, but it would have been better if we would have stayed friends. Like, we didn't have what was required for us to go into the romantic. We kind of forced it because we had that safety, what I was talking about before. And we went down the rabbit hole together, and we had some amazing moments, and we had like some of literally the deepest conversations you can ever have with a person. And we had some scary moments as well. And letting go of her was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. And I did it for her benefit, in the end. And it's the parents say, oh, this will hurt me more than it hurts you, and the kid's like, fucking bullshit, mate. But and I don't know, like, I assume it did hurt her, and she felt abandoned and all that sort of thing. But it got to the point where our conversations, because what was happening was we learned so much together, but then I started to progress and progress and progress, and she stayed stuck in the same place. And you can start to see the correlation here with some of the relationships that I've been letting go, is that a lot of the time they can't progress, they're stuck. And what was happening was, because she could see my progress, she wasn't blind to it, even though she tried to be. It triggered her a lot, and the thing is, it became difficult for her to watch me improve my life, and she couldn't get to that. Like, she had to, like, it became triggering for her, and she admitted that to me as well. And she said, it's become very hard for me to watch you achieve all these things, and make more friends and connections, and I just can't get out of this place that I'm in. I feel like I'm just stuck in hell, basically, and I'm just having to watch you enjoy your life, and I just can't get there, like, and I don't know how to get there. And I tried to help her as much as I could, to the point where I near enough destroyed myself. Like, I went literally to the edge of the very brink of self-destruction to try and save her. And that was when I learned, again, one of the most important lessons that you can learn, which is that you can't save people. They have to want to help themselves. That's the thing. It's like, it's not in our power to save anyone. Like, we're only responsible for ourselves. We save ourselves, and then by doing that, we can then potentially inspire others to do the same. But we can't, no matter how much we want to help someone, if someone does not want to be helped, they cannot be helped. And that was a really important lesson for me. And there's other connections that, because once I had that big one, and I had to let go of that big one, because letting go of people that you love is one of the hardest things that you'll ever have to do. But once I let go of that big one, it got a little bit easier after that, because it's like, well, nothing's going to compare to that, because we knew each other for years, like, and there was an ex-girlfriend that I eventually, like, I chatted to not long after that. And I went through the process of, trying to help her and all that. And the same process, it's the same cycle, went through the same cycle with her. And she said, it was really, again, I think honestly, so the people that I've chosen in life, and you know, and like if you look at some of the stuff that you know happened in the relationship, and maybe you would label them as a bad person, or maybe you'd say, you know, you're lucky you got out of it. But honestly, like even though they couldn't quite, they couldn't see things how I could see things, but they were they one thing they did have in common is they were very honest, you know. And Alicia, which was this American girl that I knew. I've been speaking to her online since I was I think she was 11 and I was 13. And then we met when we were in our early 20s. I was in my early 20s and she was, I guess, so there's like 2 years, 2 or 3 years between us. I think she was 19 and I was 22 when we first met, and she came over here for 2 weeks, and that was literally some of the worst hell I've ever been through because she was an alcoholic, and she was just completely like self-destructive and chaotic at that point, and she's bipolar as well. Um, but yeah, I ended up, because it was a cycle, you see, and like we had that it's what I got, like the drug addiction love, you know, which is what I, you know, it's not technically love, it's kind of like obsession, but you know, if you, but however you it's like however you make the distinction of how I felt for her, and it's the drug addiction. So it's like we were addicted to each other. So it was like every time, but at the same time, it was extreme highs of just this is the most amazing thing and the euphoria, and then the horrible lows where it was like this is the worst day of my life. Like I can't, I need to get out of here. Like, you know, I actually messaged my brother, my stepbrother, for help at one point. I was like, save me, get me out of here. Like, you know, during those 2 weeks, because some parts of it were literal hell. And I've honestly, I've put myself through hell to learn some of what I would say are the best lessons, or the most important, not the best, but like the most important lessons that I've ever learned. I've had to put myself through some of the worst suffering and trauma I've ever experienced. And I suppose I chose it that way. But she was really honest, and you know, I tried to, like, I had one last attempt where I tried to save her, and I put everything into it. Like I put all my emotion and all of my joy and my everything. Like I put my entire soul into it. Like, you know, and I couldn't convince her in the end. But what she said, you know, she said, what you're said, I could feel that what you're saying is true, and I know you believe it, but I can't trust it, and I don't know how to change that. She's like, there's two sides to me. There's the one that believes that you're absolutely genuine, and then there's the other one that says, don't trust a single human being, you know. And she said, and I'm stuck in between, and that is torture for me. So, and that's like, to me, when it comes right to it, like I said, you can put absolutely everything into it, and that's the best that you're going to get. Where someone realizes, you know, because I'm talking about the person that can't save themselves, that doesn't want to save themselves. That's the best you're going to get, is where they realize that I'm stuck here, I can't move forward, and like, you staying here while I'm in this place, you know, is going to hurt me more, you know. And then that's when you have to make the decision, then, you see, because that's what love is. it's it's not about what's best for you, it's about what's best for them, you know. And what was best for her in that, I realized, is like, once I get to the point where I realize then my presence is hurting you, then it's like I have to step away, you know, because I can't carry on at that point. Because like the goal is never to hurt the other person. The goal is like, well, I think we can be really good friends, I think we can make each other's lives better, etc. But once you realize that's not going to happen, once you realize that they're stuck in that cycle no matter what you do, and that your presence hurts them, your only option is to walk away. It's the only kind thing that you can do. And the thing is you have to become the villain, because they're not going to understand. And you can explain it as much as you want, but it doesn't matter, because I've had conversations where they've understood. I remember having a phone call with the one who was an ex who wasn't an ex, you know, and I explained it to her, you know, why I had to walk away. And, you know, again, I'm lucky in the people that are fortunate in the people that I've chosen, because she said, I can see your point of view. And I said to her, I said, look, the purpose of this phone call is not to make you angry. The purpose of this phone call is to let you know that I found peace. And she said, I believe you. She said, I believe you. I can hear it in your voice. But at the same time, I can feel the anger rising inside of me, and I don't want to hurt you. You know, and she said to me, she said, even now I can feel it. We're on a limited time frame. Like, we can't coexist for very long anymore. And that was the last phone call that I had with her. You know, it got to the point where she towards the end of the phone call started going back into the same cycle, the same sort of, and it was you know, she started talking about the past, and I tried to keep her in the present moment. And I said, look, let go of the past, just stay with me. And she couldn't. She said, I can't. And I was like, okay, you know, because then she was gone, and you know, and that was it basically. But even though that happened, I had that moment of clarity with her where she understood, and I was able to get through to her. And even though, you know, the dark clouds came back over again and she went back into the cycle, I know that one day she will come out of it, because she is a strong person. And you know, and well, like, the thing is, I've got no guarantee that she will, but I hope that she will. And if she does, she will understand. Like, because the thing is when you cut someone off, and you can do it in the nicest way possible, and you can explain it, and you can say, look, you know, we are hurting each other, this is the best for both of us. But no matter what you do and what you say, they will see history how they want to see it. So you can be the nicest person and so understanding and so calm, but no matter how you do it, they'll still say, you abandoned me. You know, like, I need, all of my life I've been abandoned. I thought you were going to be different, but you didn't. When things got tough, you abandoned me. And they'll always see it that way. But the thing is, in order to let someone go, in order not to hurt someone, sometimes you have to accept that you're going to be the villain. You have to concede that. You have to say, well, I know they're going to hate me, but if I stick around, they'll hate me more, and it will hurt them more. So sometimes you just have to play the bad guy to be the good guy, you know. And that's, it seems crazy to you know, but sometimes that's what it is. And you know, those were two significant relationships that I had. One that went and traveled like 25 years, and then the other one, because the other girl, like, I don't want to mention a name just in case, you know what I mean? That's why. But we'll yeah, I can't really mention the name, but I met her when I was 16, 17. So again, that one sort of was a few years ago it ended. So again, that one's like 20 years. What was it, 16? Yeah, it's about 20, 23, 20 years, something like that. So both of these were long-term cycles, you know what I mean? Like, that they went from when I was, one of them was when I was like an early teenager, another one was like a 16, 17. You know, and this was, you know, it's a long time in the making. It was a big cycle for me. And I had to let them both go, and it was a lesson for me. And you know, I've, some of the relationships afterwards, not relationships as in like romantic, but relationships as in like friendships with people that I sort of formed, and I had to let those go. After, I became much better at letting them go, you know, like, and they felt it as well. Some understood, but like I said, it's when you're the one that instigates it, because you realize before them that this is already done, there is always either a resentment, or if there's not a resentment, a lack of understanding. Because when they look back on it, they'll be like, I don't really know why that ended. Even though you explain it to them as to why, like, we're going in different paths, like, we're no longer, there's so much friction between us and frustration because we're in completely different places. And you know, you can explain it as well as you can, but like, it doesn't really matter, you know, is it, because everyone has their own perception, don't they? And I know for a fact that I'm probably the villain in some people's stories, but I'm okay with that because I stepped away for the right reasons, you know, and I did it in such a way. I tried to be as kind as possible about it, but it doesn't matter. I'll still be the villain, you know, and it's like I'm okay with that. Um, you know, and what you'll do is like because the first, like initially, you've got to let the big ones go, and that's hard, you know, and like a lot of people, what they do is they'll let them people like so sorry not even a lot like I did this right so it's not like just other people but I did this. I let myself get beaten down within an inch of my life almost to insanity, you know, for another person because I thought I could save them and I couldn't and I never could and it was never possible. But I had to let myself get to that point to like within an inch of my life of what I felt like I could take to realize then that in the future, I don't want to risk myself to that same degree again. Like, I don't want to risk my sanity. I don't want to be abused to that level. And you have to, like, when you've suffered and been through trauma, as I have, and maybe you have, like, I have a high threshold for getting beaten down. You know what I mean? Like, I can take a lot of shit, you know, from people. You know, because I've lived in it. I grew up in it. I grew up in chaos and abuse. So I can take a lot of shit. And I took a lot of shit for her. And in the end, it was meaningless. It didn't mean anything because in the end, she still saw me as the villain. So whether I walked away a year prior or when I did, I could have walked away a year prior. And you know, the only difference would have been that I suffered less because the outcome would have been the same. But I had to see that through for me. She always expected me to leave because that's her state of mind. She always knew I was going to leave. It was just a matter of when. And she even said to me at one point, she said, "Why are you still here? Why are you sticking around? Like, you're going to leave, just leave." And I just wouldn't listen because I just kept thinking I could save her. And it was never going to happen, you know. So that's the thing. People will tell us what they really think, and we're just not listening sometimes. We just think, no, you know, we think we know better, but we don't. Sometimes people are stuck and there's nothing that we can do. One of the hardest things, one of the hardest things that you have to do is if you imagine you're in the sea and someone's drowning and they're crying out for help. Now you're in a boat, you've got your own boat. Now you can move that boat over to that person, but if but that person can only hold sorry, that boat can only hold one person, right? And if that person jumps into your boat, they're going to capsize. It's going to capsize, and you're both going to drown. And that's what it's like. You know, it's like your boat only holds one person. Now, what you have to do is you have to because they have to learn to swim and then build their own boat. So you have to basically keep going. And if you come across another person who has their own boat, now the boat in this situation is like they can regulate their own nervous system. They have boundaries. They know how to have healthy relationships. They can emotionally regulate. They have emotional intelligence. You know, like they're grounded. You know, they're not fucking chaotic and messy and hurting everyone, self-destructive. That's what the boat is. If they've got no boat and they're just drowning, you can't save them. They need the boat. It's not to say they need all of those things. I'm not saying that, but they need some sort of stability, you know. And if you try to save someone who's drowning, you will drown yourself, you know. And you put the only thing there is you're putting yourself at risk because. So if we move it forward a bit, so after I've done that and I've finished the cycles and I've let the significant ones go, who were like the big life cycles, you know what I mean, the big dragons. Then what happens is you start to catch it earlier. So then, because the thing is, they're kind of like archetypes. They're kind of like, so you notice how like people who've been in abusive relationships will then go into another abusive relationship, and then they end up with the same types of guys or the same types of women. A lot of the time, it's like a lot of it relates back to the parents and what the parents were like. But you end up choosing because you're a certain way, and you know you have like whatever it might be is like your if you're avoidant, you end up with a certain type of partner, don't you? You end up with, someone who's kind of like a mother, or, so you end up going through the same cycle again and again and again. And then you ask the question of, oh, why do I keep attracting people like this? Why are all men this way, or why are all women this way? And it's like, all men or all women are not this way. Those are the ones that you're choosing. Those are the ones. In fact, sometimes you can. Because this is the effect that we can have on people, is they might not be like that before they meet us, but because of the way that we are, we kind of mold them into that, and that's the thing, because there's only so, like, I couldn't communicate my emotions, so like, that's very difficult for someone to deal with. So that they would get frustrated with me and say, you're like a robot, like, you need to tell me how you feel, and like, that's the thing, is like, because of what we lack, we kind of reflect that in the partner, don't we? And it changes the dynamic of the relationship, and the things that we lack, the partner overcompensates for that because we lack it. So then what would happen is, after it, like I said, some time passes, and I'm meeting people on Threads and different sites, but then I see the same cycle popping up with the same type of person, because the two women there was more than just those two. There was, like, Faith was another one, and there's been like loads over time, but I could see the same cycle popping up, but this time I was catching it a lot quicker, and I was like, oh, I feel this energy, now, because I'd gone to, like, I'd gone from start to finish, and I worn the t-shirt, as they say. I started to recognize that chaotic energy. So when I started to feel it again, I was like, oof. Like, if I was to describe the feeling, it's like you feel a little bit sick and a little bit scared and a little bit like, oh, this just doesn't feel right to me. There's something, it feels like dangerous. Like, I remember I met this girl on Threads, and one of the first things she said to me, because I left a voice note and just chatted to her, and she left me a gift that said, "I'm in danger." And that made me jump back. I was like, oh, that's a strange thing to say. And the reason being is that she really likes British guys, and she liked the accent, and she has this obsession over British guys. But then when she said the gift, I said, oh, I didn't realize, I'll step back, because that's the thing. She meant it as a joke, but it wasn't. Like, she could feel it, and that's why the gift came out, and I could feel it. It was like, this is dangerous. Like, I can feel it. Like, I can feel that obsession, drug related, that fucking super dopamine rush. I could see the cycle again, and she reminded me of the other girl, like, and I was like, oof, nah, I don't, and I still cracked on for a bit, but I was just like keeping a respectful distance and being like, I don't want to get too. And I could see I was just playing it out again, and it was like, oh, the whole "can I save her" kind of thing, and it's like, no, you can't, you still can't. It's like, it's it's not changed. You can't get a different outcome, and like, I tried everything in the other one, so it's not like I could do anything different. Like I said, I actually put my entire heart and soul into it, and almost died, and it still didn't make a difference. So, yeah, I eventually wised up, and I dropped her. I was like, it just doesn't feel right, but in a nice way, and we still remained on good terms. You know what I mean? I just left it to her to get, like, I didn't block her or anything like that. I just withdrew my attention, and when I withdrew my attention from her, there was very little coming back from her. Like, if I just left it to her to come to me, it was like maybe once every 2 months she would leave a comment or something like that, and that shows you, doesn't it? It's like, it's all coming from me, it's not coming from her. So yeah, like, that's the thing, is like, once we withdraw that attention and we stop making effort, we can kind of see. Then it's the same when you set a boundary with someone, and if I'd have set a boundary with any of those cycles before, that they would have stepped away a long time ago, but obviously I didn't know about boundaries back then. So yeah, like, I started to see the cycles with other people, and I started to recognize the feeling what the feeling is when it's like, oh, I've not. It's anxiety as well. It's like you feel anxiety and a danger, and this isn't right. I don't want to go down this path again. Like because it's like like it's a different person, but it's that same dark path that you keep traveling down, and because it's a different person, you doubt yourself and you say, yeah, but this is someone completely. It's like no, they're following the same patterns. Like she was bipolar, she was on medication, she was going in and out of mental health facilities. I was like, fuck, this is the same. It's like she's so many like similarities. I was like, fuck, right, okay. But the thing is, one of the reasons that I stuck with it is because I sort of found her fascinating because she was super intelligent, and it's the same with that is my habit. Is like if someone's like super intelligent, clearly sort of like really creative as well, imaginative, that sort of thing. I'm like, oh, this person's really interesting. But it's kind of like a scientist, watching a mouse that keeps going round the wheel. It's like it's kind of cruel in a way, like considering where I am and where they are, and I don't want to look at like I don't want to view people like that. It's like, well, oh well, they're an interesting test subject, but at the end of the day, we can't actually be real friends because we're in completely different places, and that was something I went through as well as I went through the father cycle where I was kind of like looking at like because like what happens is if like someone is going through cycles and they're constantly a mess, and women do this a lot actually, but I've done it. I just have that father gene in me, where you start looking after a person and they start relying on you, and then pretty soon like they find it unreasonable if you don't help them every time that they ask, even though they never give you that energy back because you've offered it to them freely and you keep offering it to them, and then they just get used to taking. They just get used to take. But it's something that like that's the thing. It comes from us, doesn't it? And I realized at a certain point, I said, I don't want this to be any relationship. I don't want to be a father figure. Like the only one person I want to be a father figure is if I ever have kids, then I'll happily be a father figure. But I don't want to do that to grown adults. I just, in the end, and I said, I remember saying to Kennedy, I said, look, you've got to do it on your own now. You can't keep using me as a crutch. And he said, well, I like the way that things are. And I was like, I realize that you do, but I don't. It drains me, and we had little conversations like that where I didn't really listen to him. He's like, I don't want things to change, and I just didn't really listen. Like, that's why, a lot of the time it's our fault, what I mean? We're just not really listening. So, eventually I asked him, I said, look, the only friendships I want are the ones that are on an equal footing, where we're both giving energy freely, what I talked about in one of the other episodes about when two people are kind of in service to each other and they both like want the best for each other, as opposed to what they can get from you or what they can get out of you or how they can use you. I only wanted relationships like that, and everything else had to go. It was like a sale, like a fire sale. Any relationship that was just draining me was a one-way thing, had to go. And it also has to be the rule moving forward as well. And then being able to recognize that moving forward. So yeah, like I would have conversations with people and I think, oh, maybe this could be something, but like eventually you'd start seeing the patterns and the red flags and you'd be like, oh, and the thing is the ones that it really gels with, like you can tell it really like really quickly, like it's something that you can't really mistake it because it just feels like safety, and I think this is the type of love that I've not really experienced in a relationship, though I have experienced it in friendships, because they say about like most people don't actually know what love is, or maybe they understand the concept of it but they've never had the experience of it, right? And I think that's true because I haven't. I understand the concept of it but I've never felt it, because they said real love, true love, what love is supposed to be, is that it actually feels like safety, it feels like peace, it feels like belonging. It's not dysregulating, it's not obsession, like it's not like a drug that you need to have all of the time. It's just like you feel calm around a person. To me, I've never experienced that with someone and called it love. to me, that just, I don't even know what that is. You know, like I understand the concept of it because people who were in love have described it to me. This is what real love is. What you're experiencing is not real love, it's obsession, you know, because it's like a drug. And I agree with that. I agree with that analysis. In which case I would say, well, I've never really been in love then, because I've never experienced what you're describing to me. Like, even as an individual, and I think you have to experience it as an individual first to be able to recognize it in your counterpart. Even as an individual, I didn't feel that peace for the majority of my life. I've only felt that within the last year or last couple of years. Like first, like, but then 2 years ago, like, you know, it was drug induced, and whereas now I'm doing it sober. So like, it's something that I've only recently felt within myself. So if I've only felt it within myself recently, how the hell am I going to feel it in with another person? You know, it's not. I don't think I was capable of it, and that's why I never experienced it. Um, you know, but we all deserve it. That's the thing. We all, like, even though, yeah, I wasn't capable of it, but it wasn't. I said it's not our fault that we're not capable of it. You know, we weren't brought up that way. You know, we weren't taught what healthy relationships and healthy love, and you know, like we like I learned this again. I learned it late in life what real love actually was. You know, I based it on, well, I feel like cartoons, Disney movies, an unrealistic expectation. You know, maybe I thought to a certain degree it's like perfection, because I think Disney movies kind of promotes perfection to a certain degree. Um, you know, maybe not Beauty and the Beast, but you know, a lot of it, the characters are very much like that. They're kind of, they don't really make many mistakes. You know, like they're sort of, I don't know, everything just seems to go like really well, and they just get on, and it's amazing. And you know, even Beauty and the Beast, they're throwing snowballs at each other. There's like a montage of them just having amazing times. You know, and it's not real, is it? You know, like I'm not saying that being in love with someone isn't amazing, because clearly it is, because people stay together for like their entire lives, 40, 50, 60 years, and then even then they say even that wouldn't isn't long enough. Like I would spend every lifetime with this person if I could, you know, and you know that that's the real thing. So yeah, letting go is for me one of the hardest lessons that you go through. I think as well as holding on to things, like holding on to things that are in the past, which is a big problem. That's the one that Chris had, that he couldn't move past that, or he just couldn't let go of the past. Um, because maybe sometimes we convince ourselves that it could have gone right if we'd only made different decisions. But honestly, I've been through that. I've tried, like I've gone back and back. Like I've kept going back over the years and tried different things, and then literally I tried everything. It was never going to work. Never. It doesn't matter what you put into it. The only thing would have changed is that you would have destroyed yourself more. You would have damaged yourself more, and maybe you would have spent more time with them, but you would have slowly like destroyed yourself over time. You know. So any relationship that didn't work out, there was nothing that you could have done. Nothing. It was always meant to end. The ones that are meant to last, they do last. That's the thing, is like, if it's meant to be, it won't end. There's always a reason why it ends. Like if you, like, you know, when I spoke about before about, if you're determined to be with someone and that love is truly returned, and I'm talking about you love each other in equal measure, which is what love is. There's no, it doesn't even enter your thinking. It doesn't even, like, it's not even a possibility that you would not be with that person. Like, how can something end if you have that? It can't. It's impossible. You know, like, it's literally till death do us part. Like, I've seen, like, you look at people who they've had cancer for like 5 years, 10 years, and they've literally been at their bedside every single day. That's what real love is. You're telling me because you have a few arguments and a few problems, and then you break up because of it, you're saying, oh, well, that could have been love. It's like, no, that isn't love. What you're describing is not love. What you're describing is a toxic relationship, and it ended because it was meant to end, or whatever the reason is. There's a lot of different reasons why relationships end, but if they end, they're meant to end, you know, and I truly believe that. The ones who are meant for us do not leave. and that's true of friendships and it's true of relationships. So if you feel guilty about having to let someone go, even though you know it's the right thing, you don't need to. Like, if you're like, we know when something is over, we can feel it. The emotions aren't there anymore. It drains us. We know deep down that's done. It's the same with relationships. We know when it's dead in the water. We're just telling ourselves that we can salvage it, or like, oh, we're going back to the past and saying, oh, but it was good in the beginning. Yeah, but it's not been that for fucking 8 months, or it's not been that for 2 years or 5 years or whatever it is. It's like, if the more time that passes is just your own time that you're wasting. That's the thing, is like, because if you're meant to let that person go, until you let that person go, another person can't come in. So we have to let go of the wrong people. And that's not to say they were always wrong, because we were always meant to learn that lesson. But they're not permanent, you know what I mean? Like, we have to let go of the temporary people to find the permanent people, if you want to call it that. I think that's probably better than saying wrong, because they're not wrong, because we're meant to meet everyone that we meet. But some people are not meant to stay in our lives, and they need to leave to make the space for the ones that are meant to be in our lives, and that's why letting go is one of the most, if not the most important lesson that you can go through, because it clears the space for you to rebuild your life in such a way that you're surrounded by people who all give you, who basically, who all care about you and all give you equal energy, who respect boundaries. You can say, you have no fear of, say you make a meeting with someone, you're going to meet them, and you say, oh, you know what, actually, I'm not feeling up to it today. Do you mind if we reschedule for next week or whatever? And they say, no problem. Don't worry about it. You look after you. Those are the people you're sacrificing for. Like, those are the people you're letting go of, people who you've attached to find those people, because like, those are the people that you want to surround yourself with, the people that accept you fully for who you are, accept, if you don't feel comfortable, if you don't, they respect that, because respect is a huge thing. And the truth is, a lot of the people who we do let go don't have that respect. But also, at the same time, I've experienced people that do. We still, like, we've always had respect for each other. Yvonne was like that. She was someone I knew, I talked to in Germany, really spiritual and everything. I have mentioned it once or twice, actually, maybe once. But I was able to let go. Like, I said, look, I think we've sort of reached the end, the natural conclusion. And she respected. She's always had a lot of respect for people, and she had a really funny dark side to her as well, and she liked to mess with people. But yeah, I learned so much from Yvonne. But in the end, it was very apparent that we had different senses of humor, and it was very apparent that I frustrated her in who I was as a person, in that I didn't do the things sometimes that I didn't react or do the things that she expected me to do, and that frustrated her. And I was sort of like, well, I'm not going to react or do the things you want me to do, because I'm my own person. So I'll react how I want to react, And we had, like, even when we had frustrating conversations, I still learned a lot, and you know what, we were still able to laugh about it, even on the call. Like, we were able to laugh about when we got frustrated at each other. So there was always love there, always. And I didn't have that before that. I've never experienced a relationship like that, where we could get really frustrated at each other, but still have that underlying, I still love you, even when we're in the midst of a conversation, like in the midst of an argument, or because I don't really argue, but it was like a very heated discussion. And I could say, oh, I still love you, and she'd say, yeah, I still love you too, and then she'd carry on. I've never experienced that. And that was an eye opener, you know what I mean, to be able to, like, stop in the middle of something and then carry on and say, look. And then she's like, well, yeah, but the reason you frustrate me is because of this. I say, right, okay. And we go back into the problem, but we can still, like, take that time out and say, just so you know, I still love you no matter what, but I'm gonna carry on. Right, okay, yeah, no worries, because you're kind of checking that they're okay and then just carrying on. So that was really interesting. But in the end, I think I learned everything that I needed to learn. and she wasn't really learning anything from me. Some of the wounds that she had, she wasn't really getting past them. You know, the wound that she had with men, where she didn't trust men completely. She wasn't moving past that. And some of the other wounds that she had as well. She wasn't really ready to address them. The weight issue thing, that she'd been bullied for a weight for many years, and she wasn't ready to move past that either. So again, she was stuck. And I like really learned loads from her and like really moved forward in the time that we had together. And it was the same again as like, you know, because it sounds shitty, but you will outgrow people. Like if you're determined to go on a path of growth and a path of you know, really discovering yourself on a deeper level and understanding yourself on a deeper and deeper level, like the versions of you will change. And that, you know, I thought about this today actually, and this is really interesting. You know, I was speaking to Nikki through voice notes yesterday. And she spoke about meditation. She said, you know, I really need to get back to meditation. I spoke about what I did on the other episodes, which was the practice of just being. And I said, you know, being able to sit in silence and let the thoughts come and go. And you know, she said, oh, I prefer the guided meditation because she's got ADHD. She said, I prefer the guided meditation because I need something to focus on, and that helps me to sort of get through it. And you know, I realized when she said that, she said, like, I thought to myself, I thought, you know, 2 days ago, I'd have said the exact same thing. But 2 days later, my opinion has changed. And I started to think about, you know, when people say, I've changed my mind, like, think about that. Like, I've changed my mind. My mind is not the same. You know, my opinion of you know, something as important as meditation is not the same as what it was 2 days ago because I've learned since then. And that aspect of me, you know, because if even I was to go back to the some of the earlier podcast episodes, I was talking about the importance of guided meditation. But my opinion of that has changed now. I'm not saying, because I still think guided meditation is important. I said that to her. I said, yeah, fucking amazing. Like, you know, I was, you know, but now I moved on to this, you know, and that's the thing is like, we move on very quickly and like our opinions change. And if we grow and learn more about ourselves, again, we change. So the person I was when I first met Yvonne was very different from the person I was towards the end of that relationship. It was very different. Like, even though I didn't quite see, because we don't see ourselves that clearly, do we? Especially the past version and the current version. But it was clear by how much friction it was causing, by me just being me and everything that I'd learned. I'd learned the lessons so well. I was triggering her quite a lot. Like, I was triggering her emotions quite a bit. And it became frustrating for her. And once I realized that was causing us like so much frustration, again, it's like I'm not here to hurt people. Like, once I realized that this is actually hurting you quite a bit, and you don't want to face like what it's bringing up for you. So my presence is actually hurting you as a person, you know, because like if she wanted to deal with it, it would help her, you know, because that's what I wanted. She was triggering me in the beginning. And I was like, this is fucking great because now I can see where I need to, what I need to work on and where I need to like, look, you know, and I learned very quickly because I wanted to be triggered. I wanted for it to provoke these wounds in me so I could deal with them and we could work through it. And I knew we could even work through it together, and we did. But she didn't want me to trigger her. She didn't want to deal with her wounds. And that was the difference, you know. So because one of us, and that's the thing, for two people to continue with the friendship to continue, both people have to be they both have to be willing to grow and have an open mind, and you know, if you do trigger someone, be willing to learn and sort of like, we have to be like, if you're moving forward, if your story is moving forward constantly and someone's is stagnant and the chapter stays the same, you're going to have to let that person go. You will have to, because if they've got no growth, then you can't take them with you, because what will happen is they'll hang on to your coattails and they'll drag you back, so you won't be able to move forward as quickly as what you would without them. And it's not just like, I'm not saying that life is all about growth. Yvonne said that to me. She said, oh, you just want to do is grow all the time. I said, no, because like I enjoy the journey. I enjoyed, even in the midst of the argument that we had, I was still enjoying myself, you know. And I was laughing to myself a little bit, you know, because I thought this is a really good like learning experience for me, you know. And it didn't, and that's the thing, like she wasn't enjoying that, you know what I mean? Like even though because I started leading then, and that's when the distrust came, because I was like, well, let me lead you, because you can't seem to, like, even when you're angry, you can't seem to, like, your emotions take over. And I said, look, I don't do that. My emotions don't take, even if I'm angry, I'm still me. I can still come out the emotion. I can still go back to the observer at any time. You know, so I started to lead her, and she didn't like that because she had the masculine wound, you know, the man, you know, I don't trust men. So when I started to lead, she started to get frustrated because basically she's always been in control, and she's been able to lead for most of her life. No one's ever been like led her, and she didn't like it. You know, she felt like she was in a weakened position. Um, and yeah, it was. But like, I was so grateful to her. Like, I sent her a message after it, and I said, I learned so much from you. And like I said, you know, thank you, I love you, all of the nice things, you know. And I meant it as well. It wasn't like I was just bullshitting. And even despite the little frictions and that, it doesn't matter to me. Like, it's a fact that it happened, but it's her choice. You know what I mean? Like, it's her, if she doesn't want to face those wounds, it's not for me to say, "Oh, well, you should." You know what I mean? Like, it's not for me to say that. She has the right to face those wounds when she's ready. So it's not for me to dictate that to her. Unfortunately, we just reached the end of, you know, the end of the road that we, you know, we walked with each other on the path for a little bit, and we helped each other like significantly. But then we came to, like, we couldn't go any further with each other. Like, you know, it's like I've got to veer off this way and I'm going this way. It's like, yeah, okay, I might see you down the line, I might not. Um, and that's the way it is with a lot of things. Is like, you have to, like, detachment is like that. You know, I thought that, like, detachment again is a massively important lesson. I thought that detachment meant that you don't care about anyone, and you know what? It's not that at all, because you care about everyone. You care about the people that you've let go. Like, you don't stop caring about them just because you let them go. Like you carry them with you. You take, like, all of the things you learnt together and the laughs you shared, and you even, for me, I think you even take bits of their personality along with you as well. Like, we almost take the best of them with us. But detachment isn't about not caring. Detachment is about fully enjoying an experience with someone and being in the moment with them. But then when it's time for them to leave, you let them go. You know, so you're not like, oh, we need to get together quick and we need to do it. It's like, no, you accept that you'll come back together when the time is right. So you're not constantly chasing them. Like, that's what detachment is for me. Like, it's allowing people to be themselves. Like, if you have a life and you're busy, I'm not going to keep chasing you. Oh, meet up with me, meet up, because then you get frustrated because you place expectations on a person, and be like, well, oh well, how come you're not messaging me back, and how come you're not? But they're based on your expectations, so you're creating your own frustration. You know what I mean? Like, I always said, look, one of the fucking best quotes is just, you do you. You know what I mean? Like, if you feel like messaging someone, or you feel like dropping a voice note and it's genuine, and you're talking about, you know, I did that with Ruth, and I said, you know, I miss being able to talk to you since you've been pregnant. It's been difficult. And she said the same. If you're genuine with your emotions, people connect back to you. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to run after them and guilt trip them. Like, that doesn't, it never works. That never, you know, that never works out, you know, because it's about you. It's all about you and what you want. And that doesn't work with people. That's what detachment is. If you love them, let them go. But you can love someone, like, that's the thing. If you love someone, let them go. But if they're meant for you, they'll come back. That's the difference. If they're not meant for you, they'll stay away. That's the difficult thing, because if you're someone that likes to be in control, letting go of someone, you know, it's like catching a fish, then putting them back in the sea and saying, well, if the fish is meant for me, it'll swim back to me. But the fish might choose not to swim back. The fish might say, oh, well, I'll swim over here then. You know, that's the difficulty, because you can't control it. And that's the thing, is controlling people, a lot of the time, it's based on a fear of, well, if I give them enough leeway, they'll just abandon me like everyone else. But the irony is that you can't find people that truly care about you until you're fully willing to let them go. and say, well, this, like if I'm honest with them, they could leave, but I'm willing to take that risk because if they truly care about me, they won't leave. And it takes bravery to do that. It takes a lot of bravery. And yeah, like I had to go through so much suffering and trauma to get to the point where I could actually do that, and actually learn that lesson. So, anyone who hasn't learned that lesson, it's like, well, that is a big one. I don't, like I'm not judging that in any way because it took me a long time to learn that lesson, to be able to let people go. Um, and it is like losing a piece of yourself, I think, sometimes. Like, because, some people who I've let go have been a massive part of my life. They've almost been like everything to me. Um, and I had to let that go, and I had to rebuild myself out of the ashes, kind of thing, and I've had to do that several times. And it's a difficult process, especially in the beginning, because you feel empty, you feel isolated, you feel alone. And it's quite a daunting task. It's like you start again it's like going up a mountain, but like you've gone up all these mountains, then you're starting again at a new mountain and being like, right, now I have to rebuild my life again. So yeah, that's why I say it takes bravery. It takes bravery to do it, because it's like, right, I've got to start again, but this is what's best for me long term. You're in service to your future self, and you're like, well, short term, it might be easier to keep this person around because I'm not as lonely, but long term, I know that this person is not meant to be in my life. So it's better to do it now than to keep dragging this on and keep trying to cling on to something that's already gone. You know what I mean? And that's detachment. And detachment is is an amazing thing. And detachment is like, you'll find like the best people have detachment because it's not because they're not controlling, they're not trying to control you. They're just allowing you to be yourself. They're saying, I saw someone in the park today who I met. I think it was about a month ago, and I remembered the dog's name, and I remembered her name as well. I actually wrote it down on my notepad. The dog I remembered anyway, but her name, and I told her I did as well. I walked over and I said, "Is that a wizard I see?" Because the dog's called Merlin, and she's like, "Oh, you remembered? Like, you've got a good memory." And it's funny because I wrote it down, but then I told her after, and I said, "Oh, your name's Joe, isn't it?" And she said, "Yeah." Uh, and then I was honest about it because I didn't want to make out like, because I didn't want to like, oh, well, I remembered your name. I said to her, so I actually wrote your name down after I met you, because what I do is if I have any significant conversations with someone that last over 10 minutes, I write it down in my notepad so that it sort of triggers the memory for me. And she said, oh, yeah, it's a good idea that. She said, I always remember people's dogs. I said, no, I'm the same. I said, I remember the dogs, I don't remember the human. But if someone makes an effort to tell me their name, I kind of want to do that justice. Like, I don't want to just forget it, because I know I will forget. Because if you don't see someone in a month or 2 months, you've only met them once, how am I going to remember that name? Got no chance. So I write it in my notepad. And it's like, I don't think that's like, because I was honest about it as well. So I don't think it's disingenuous. And I've made the effort to write it down, you know what I mean? Which most people wouldn't do. So, it just shows that you give a shit, I suppose, a little bit. But yeah, I think I've covered everything, in terms, like, because I wanted this to be about letting go. That was the thought process. And I think, yeah, I think once you can do that, it's very difficult to do in the beginning, but what you find on the other side of that is some amazing people. And obviously you don't have to let everyone go. Some people you just need to have real and honest conversations with them. And then that's the thing, because it's only if they're stuck and refuse to change. Like, some people I've known for years and years and years, and they have changed significantly. And sometimes they'll change because of me, because I'll say, look, like, there's only so long you can sort of stay with someone in the mud and the dirt, and they're just not, it's like, look, I'm trying to help you here, but you have to want to help yourself, and it's, for me, it's like, like, the love is unconditional, but the friendship is not unconditional. You know what I mean? Like, the friendship is like, we agreed to help each other, to grow together, to like, once when someone stops caring about themselves, in a way, they also stop caring about you, because it has a knock-on effect. And like, you can allow that for a certain amount of time, 6 months or 8 months or so. But eventually you got to be like, right, it's enough now. Like, get the fuck up. You know what I mean? Like, you can like, I know that whatever's happened to you has happened to you, but you can only wallow in self-pity for so long. Like, there's a grief period, fine, but then eventually it becomes self-pity. Like, it was like that with Chris, and it's like you can only wallow for so long before it's like, no, like, you need to move on now, and whatever you need to do to get over that, I'll be fucking there for it. What if you want to go out on a drinking night out, or you want to go bounce on a bouncy castle, or you want to go to the gym together, whatever it is you need to get out of that, I will be there. But I'm no longer gonna stay here in your your pity party. Like, move on, move forward, do something different, make an effort to help yourself. You just stop caring. So like I said, with friendship, and if they truly care about you, and this is the great thing about friendship, if they truly care about you, they will get off the floor, because the threat of losing you is too much. They may not care about themselves, but they should still care about you. And that's what got me off the floor a lot of the time. It's like, well, a lot of the time I didn't give a shit about me, but I did care about the people around me. And when I started to hurt them because I was hurting myself, I was like, no, I'm not doing that anymore. So I got off the floor. I stopped with I stopped fucking smoking weed and stuff, but I didn't, I did do it for myself, but at the same time, it was my friends that got me off the floor. It's my friends that showed me that, you don't have to do this. Like, we still love you without the weed. You know what I mean? Like, you can be yourself. You don't have to have this crutch. I actually prefer you sober. And I was like, okay, right. I've got people around me who, accept me for me. And that gave me the strength. That gave me the strength to do it. And that's what we do. That's what friendship is. We give each other strength. But sometimes you've got to have hard conversations with people. Not everyone needs an arm around the shoulder. Sometimes they need a slap. And that's friendship. So, like, it's your job to fucking give them a slap and say, right, I've had enough. You get the fuck up. And sometimes we need a slap. Because that's just human beings for you, and that's a true friend. Like, friends that just lie to you to make you feel better is not a true friend, because it's harder, like, to when you've had a friend for years, to tell them the truth and to really, like, have an honest conversation and say, look, I think you've been letting yourself down. I think you could be like, you're not doing the things that you said you would. You're just saying the same shit over and over again, and your actions are not reflecting that. Like, to have hard conversations, it's very difficult to do that with a person, but you've got to really give a shit about someone, because they could get angry. They could have a go at you and say, well, fuck you, you're not my real friend. It's like, yeah, go on then. I'm the villain. Go on, make me out to be the villain, but I'll be the villain if it gets you off the fucking floor. And they're like, oh, because they realize then what you're doing. It's like, right, the anger dies, and it's like, I can, but if you're lucky and you've known people for a long time, they'll realize that, because I'm not someone that has those harsh conversations with people very often. I'll only do it when it's really needed, so, like, yeah, I know that the reason you wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't needed, and I know you're doing it because you give a shit, because you care about me. So it's like, I know, like, I trust you well enough to know that you wouldn't do this just for your own reasons. Like, it has to have got bad for you to get to this point where you have to confront me, and sometimes you do have to confront your friends. I think, what was it? I think Dumbledore said it, didn't he, in Harry Potter? And he said it's hard to stand up to your enemies, but it's even harder to stand up to your friends. And it is, it's a difficult thing to be able to do that, but sometimes that's what our friends need us to do. And sometimes we need to be called out our own bullshit, and we need friends to do that. We need friends to be honest with us sometimes. I said, we don't always need a pat on the back and, oh, it'll be okay. Sometimes it's like, no, you need to fucking get a bit pissed off and drag yourself up and fucking get outside, like, and stop just lying in bed every day, and that's not to sort of throw shade on people who've got depression, because I've been there myself. I've been in bed every day, but I didn't have anyone around me like that, you know what I mean, who was like willing to fucking, like, I'll go through it with you, like, I'll go to the park with you if you need me to. I'll come, I'll be fucking there in 10 minutes, and I'll help you, like, you know what I mean? So, but like I said, you've got to want to ask, you've got to ask for help, and you've got to want to be helped. If you don't want help and you just, because a lot of the time it's about self-punishment. That's all. We think we deserve to be punished. We don't think we deserve to have nice things. We don't deserve to be loved. We don't think we're enough. We think there's something wrong with us. Like, we've convinced ourselves that this is my sentence. We've sentenced ourselves, and we're serving the time. We're serving the time for the alleged crime that we've committed. But we don't deserve that. Like I said, everyone deserves love. Everyone deserves peace. Everyone deserves to feel safe. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it there. I think that's a good point to conclude it. As always, I appreciate you listening to the podcast. I appreciate any thoughts that you want to send my way, or if you want to put any comments or anything like that, or send me a message or whatever, and let me know your thoughts, then I'm always around. But yeah, I hope you like the episode, and difficult subject with letting go, but I think if maybe you'll agree, it's an extremely important one. And yeah, episode 10, it's definitely moving along, and yeah, I'm excited about doing the next episode and completing the season. So I'll speak to you next time. See you then.